Hello everyone, this is Andrew at Crown Academy of English. This is an English grammar lesson about transitive and intransitive verbs. A sentence with an intransitive verb only has a subject and a verb, so there is no object. The subject is the person or thing that is doing the action. Okay, so the subject is a noun and it is the person or thing doing the action. Example, Jane is smiling. So Jane is the person doing the action and the action is smiling. So here the verb smiling is intransitive. That's all there is, the subject and the verb. Another example, Mark is sleeping. So Mark is the person doing the action and the action is sleeping. Okay, so sleeping again is intransitive. Now, a sentence with a transitive verb has a subject, verb, but also a direct object. So there is something extra. And a direct object is the person or thing that is acted upon by the subject. So again, a direct object, it is usually a noun or a noun phrase, and it is being acted upon by the subject. Example, Mark is writing a letter. So Mark is the subject, this is the action, writing, this is the verb, and the letter is the direct object. Okay? Because the letter is being acted upon by the subject. Because Mark is writing it. Okay? So here, writing is transitive. David is eating a sandwich. David is the subject. The verb is eating, and the direct object is sandwich. So eating is a transitive verb. So, how do we find a direct object? So there are two steps. So the first thing to do is to say the subject and the verb, followed by the question what or whom. So we're going to ask a question, we're going to read the sentence, and then we're going to ask a question about it. And if there is an answer to that question, then that answer is the direct object. And since there is a direct object, the verb is transitive. But if there is no answer to this question, if we cannot find an answer, then that means that there is no direct object. And since there is no direct object, the verb is intransitive. Let me give you two examples. David is eating a sandwich. So let's ask our question. Say the subject and verb, followed by the question what or whom. So, David is eating what or whom? Well, David is eating sandwich. So, sandwich is the answer to this question. Therefore, sandwich is the direct object. And therefore, eating is a transitive verb. Okay? Now the second example, Mark is sleeping. Again, let's ask our question. Say the subject and verb followed by the question what or whom. Mark is sleeping what? Or Mark is sleeping whom? Well, there's no answer, is there? In fact, the question, it doesn't really make any sense. So, since there is no answer, that means that there is no direct object. And therefore, sleeping is intransitive. Okay? So here, this is intransitive. So this is a very useful way to identify a direct object in a sentence. Intransitive verbs. Let's look at them in a little bit more detail. So we have already seen the definition. So this is the definition. There is a subject and a verb. No object. And intransitive verbs often describe physical behavior or movement. Example: Jane is laughing. Jane is the subject. Laughing is the verb. It's the action. Intransitive. Sarah is walking. Sarah is the subject. Walking is the verb. It is the action. Intransitive. The door opened. So here we have the verb open in the past simple tense. So door is the subject. Opened is the verb. Intransitive. And prepositional phrases or adverbial phrases are often after an intransitive verb. For example, we could say Sarah is walking to the office. So this is a prepositional phrase and it is a preposition of place. But be careful, this is not a direct object. Okay, this is not a direct object. Well, how do we know? Well, let us do our test question. Sarah is walking what? Well, there's no answer, is there? Sarah is walking whom? There's no answer. So since there is no answer, there is no direct object. To the office simply tells us where Sarah is walking, but that is not a direct object. Okay? We can also use an adverb. Slowly, this is an adverb of manner. It tells us how something happens. So here we are saying the door opened slowly. But again, this is not a direct object, because we can ask the test question, the door opened what? Well, there's no answer. The door opened whom? There's no answer. Therefore, there's no direct object, and so the verb is intransitive. And here, walking is also intransitive. But we often use prepositional phrases and adverbial phrases with intransitive verbs simply to give us more information about the action. Common examples of intransitive verbs. So, arrive, die, fall, go, laugh, sleep, smile, and stay. So all of these verbs, they only exist as an intransitive verb. Okay, so an example would be my cat died. My cat died. There's no object. We do not say my cat died cat, for example. So there is only an intransitive use and meaning for all of these verbs. There are also some verbs which are intransitive but also exist as a transitive verb. Example, close, eat, open, play, run, sit, stand, and walk. Let me give you an example. Eat, if it is intransitive, we can simply say, I am eating. No object. I am eating. But we can also say, I am eating a sandwich. And there it is transitive, because there is a direct object. So certain verbs can be both transitive and intransitive. Transitive verbs. So as we have already seen, the definition is that a transitive verb has a direct object. Example, Jane is drinking a cup of coffee. So Jane is drinking what? Well, the answer is a cup of coffee. So this is the direct object. I have made a sandwich. Direct object. Mark is playing football. Football is the direct object. Mark is playing what? Football. Now, there is a special type of transitive verb. A special type of transitive verb called ditransitive verb. And they can have two objects. They have a direct object and also an indirect object. And an indirect object indicates the person or thing that receives the direct object. Let me give you an example. Jane is giving me an apple. Jane is giving me an apple. So let's first of all identify the direct object with our test question. Jane is giving what? Well, the answer is apple. Jane is giving an apple. So apple is the direct object. Okay? Now, who or what is receiving the apple? Well, the answer is me. Therefore, me is the indirect object. Okay? And notice the order. We have the subject, the verb, the indirect object is first, and then we have the direct object. So the order is important. And common examples of ditransitive verbs: bring, buy, give, make, offer, pass, sell, show, and wish. Of course, there are many others. And I will give you one example with the verb buy. David is buying Jane a ring. David is buying Jane a ring. So ring is the direct object, David is the subject, and Jane is the indirect object. David is buying Jane a ring. So these are ditransitive verbs. Some verbs can be transitive or intransitive with the same meaning. Example, the door opened is intransitive, and I opened the door with an object is transitive, but the meaning of open is the same. Jane is reading, intransitive. Jane is reading a book, transitive. And the action of read is the same. The children are playing, intransitive. Last night we played cards, transitive, because we had the object, cards. But the overall general meaning of play is the same. It means to enjoy yourself, or to do an activity. And some verbs can be transitive or intransitive, but with a very different meaning. And one example is the verb sit. Intransitive, we can say Mark is sitting on a chair. And the meaning simply describes the physical position, sitting on a chair. But the transitive meaning is very different. Mark is sitting an exam. And this means that Mark is taking an exam. So you see, the same verb, sit, it changes its meaning completely from when it is intransitive to when it is transitive. And this is why this lesson is so important, to understand the difference between intransitive and transitive. So my advice is, when you learn a new verb, or when you hear or see a new verb, look for it in the dictionary. Okay? Look carefully at the dictionary, at all the definitions. And let's have an example with the verb run. So there are two main definitions of the verb run. And this is the first one. So if we look in the dictionary, it will tell us it's a verb, and it will give us the definition: to move quickly, faster than walking. And I'm sure you all know and understand this definition. But let's look carefully. It's telling us, the dictionary is telling us with the letter I, that this is an intransitive use of the verb run. So this is the intransitive use and meaning. And so now we know that we do not use a direct object for this meaning. So with this information, that it is intransitive, we know that the sentence has this form: Mark is running. We know that we must not write a direct object. But there is also, in the dictionary, a second definition of the verb run. And it's telling us that the meaning is to manage something, or to organize something. And look, here it is telling us that this definition is transitive, because there's a letter T. So this is the transitive use and meaning. And now we know that we must use a direct object, because it is transitive. So we know that we must write a sentence like this: Mark runs a hotel, which means that Mark manages a hotel. Okay, so this is why this lesson is important. It is not just theory. Okay, so if you know the difference between intransitive and transitive, then you will learn the new definition, and you will also learn how to use that definition, how to write it, how to say it. Okay, so your vocabulary will improve and your grammar will improve. So the advice is, for every new verb, look in a dictionary and look at each definition and look to see if it is intransitive or a transitive definition, and then practice making sentences using that form. Okay? So this is the picture of Mark when he's running. Okay? So, there we are. That's the end of the lesson. Here are some other lessons about verbs which I think you will be interested in. So some of them are tenses, and this one is explaining the verb get. Okay? So thanks for watching. My name is Andrew at Crown Academy of English. I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.